Every time you fill your car with petrol, a man you never heard of helped set that price. Most people have never heard his name. January 20th, 2001. 11:47 p.m. Bill Clinton has 13 minutes left as President of the United States. His staff are packing boxes. The White House is being handed over in hours. He picks up a pen. He signs a presidential pardon for the most wanted white-collar criminal in America. The man's name is Marc Rich. He is wanted on 51 counts of fraud, racketeering, and tax evasion. He sold oil to Iran, while 52 American citizens were held hostage in Tehran. He has been a fugitive for 18 years, hunted across multiple continents by FBI agents. And in 13 minutes, he is free. When the news broke the next morning, the reaction from both parties was immediate. Democrats were outraged. Republicans were outraged. Two former presidents called it inexplicable. Congress opened an investigation into whether the pardon had been purchased. And here is where the story gets strange. Marc Rich's ex-wife had donated more than $1 million to the Democratic Party, $450,000 to the Clinton Presidential Library, over $100,000 to Hillary Clinton's Senate campaign. When Congress called her to testify, she took the Fifth Amendment. 3 questions this video will answer. First, who was Marc Rich, really? Not the fugitive. The man before the indictment. The genius underneath the criminal. Second, did Clinton sell a presidential pardon? The investigation ran for 4 years. The answer is not what you expect. Third, why does any of this still matter to you today? Because that man at the petrol pump, the one who helped set every price you have ever paid to fill your tank, built his empire from exile while FBI agents were hunting him. October 1973. American petrol stations are turning cars away. Lines stretch around city blocks, sometimes for miles. Rationing is introduced. Fights break out at the pump. The price of oil has quadrupled in 3 months. Not because oil ran out. Because the men who controlled it decided to make a point. To understand Marc Rich, you need to understand who those men were. In the 1950s and 1960s, 7 companies controlled the entire global supply of crude oil. Standard Oil, Royal Dutch Shell, BP Mobil, Gulf, Texaco, Chevron. The industry called them the Seven Sisters. Everyone else called them a cartel. These 7 companies controlled oil at every point. From the well in the ground, to the refinery, to the pump where you filled your tank. They set the price. They decided who bought and who did not. Oil was not traded. It was allocated. If your country needed crude oil, you went to one of the 7 sisters. You signed a long-term contract. You accepted their price. You had no alternative. Marc Rich looked at this and saw something no one else saw. Not a system to accept. A system to break. Antwerp, Belgium. 1934. A boy is born into a Jewish family in a city that has perhaps 5 years of safety remaining. His name is Marcel David Rye. He is too young to understand what is coming. His parents are not. The family fled before the Nazis arrived. France, Morocco, Bolivia. Each move a little further from Europe. Each move a little closer to survival. By 1941, they were in New York. They had nothing. He learned English from the streets of Queens. He learned numbers from whoever would teach him. He learned very early that the world gave its rewards to the people who understood something before everyone else did. At 20 years old, he walked into the offices of Philip Brothers, a commodity trading house on Park Avenue, and asked for a job in the mailroom. They said yes. Within 3 years, he was not in the mailroom. He had an instinct for what a commodity was actually worth, independent of what the market was currently saying. He could hold a piece of metal and tell you whether the price was right. Not through calculation. Through feel. In 1967, the company sent him to Madrid, where he met a man named Pincus Green. Quiet. Methodical. The opposite of Rich's intensity. Together they were, in the words of everyone who knew them, formidable. In 1973, Rich and Green decided they had made enough money for someone else. They walked into the office of their boss at Philip Brothers. They presented the numbers, the trades they had executed, the revenue they had generated, the profits they had produced. They named a number for their bonus. They said no. Rich and Green walked out that afternoon and never went back. They founded Marc Rich and Company AG in Zug, Switzerland. Not New York. Not London. Switzerland, low taxes, total discretion, and crucially, no extradition treaty with the United States. At the time, that last detail seemed like sensible tax planning. It would become the most important decision of his life. Here is the idea that made Marc Rich a billionaire. And here is how it changed the price you pay every time you fill your tank. The Seven Sisters controlled oil through long-term contracts. Every barrel committed months or years in advance. No flexibility. No competition. Rich's idea was to create a market for oil that worked like the market for everything else. Buy today. Sell today. At today's price. No contract. No commitment beyond this transaction. That is the spot market. The price on the petrol station sign right now, that is the spot price. Marc Rich created that system. To do this, he needed something the Seven Sisters assumed he could not get. Direct access to the oil-producing countries themselves. He flew to Tehran. To Lagos. To Moscow. He sat across the table from oil ministers and national governments and made them an offer the Seven Sisters had never made. Sell your oil to me directly. Today's price. Your choice. My money. No middlemen. The oil ministers had spent their entire careers being told what their oil was worth by Western companies. Here was a man offering them the power to decide for themselves. Most of them said yes. The Seven Sisters had armies of lawyers. Rich had something better. He had arrived first. When crude oil was $2 a barrel, this idea was interesting. When it hit $40 during the Iran crisis, it was worth billions. When it reached $140 in 2008, it was the architecture of the entire global energy market. He took the oil market from 7 of the most powerful companies on Earth. He won. But before Rich could build his empire unopposed, someone was coming for him. And this person was every bit as dangerous as Marc Rich was. Rudy Giuliani. In 1983, he was United States Attorney for the Southern District of New York. Young. Ambitious. Building a reputation on prosecuting powerful people. Giuliani and Rich were not opposites. They were mirrors. Giuliani was an Italian-American kid from Brooklyn who had clawed his way into the most prestigious legal office in America through sheer aggression. Rich was a Jewish refugee from Antwerp who had taken on the most powerful oil cartel in history through sheer aggression. Both men had something to prove. Both men played to win. When Giuliani's office turned its attention to Marc Rich, it brought everything it had. 51 counts. Tax evasion on $48 million in income. At the time, the largest tax fraud case in American history. Racketeering. Wire fraud. And the charge that would define public perception of the case. Trading oil with Iran while 52 American hostages were in captivity. Potential sentence. More than 300 years in federal prison. Rich's lawyers argued the charges were legally flawed. That Giuliani had misapplied the RICO statute. that the oil trades were legal under the framework Marc Rich operated in. The court would never settle this argument, because on the night before the indictment was made public, Marc Rich boarded a flight to Zug, Switzerland. He had chosen his base country very carefully, and it had just saved him from 300 years in an American prison. But Giuliani was not finished. He would pursue Rich for the next 15 years. Across 4 continents. From the U.S. Attorney's Office, to the Mayor's Office, to every public platform he had. 2 men. 2 enormous egos. And the FBI's most wanted list sitting between them. Here is the first answer to the question we opened with. Who was Marc Rich, really? He was a man who ran a global empire from a Swiss villa while former Mossad officers managed his personal security. He was not hiding. He was operating. From Zug, Rich built. His company became Iran's largest oil buyer after the hostage crisis. Not despite the crisis. During it. He supplied the Soviet Union with metals when Western firms would not. He moved commodities for apartheid South Africa while the country was globally sanctioned. He traded with Cuba, with Angola, with every regime the United States considered an enemy. But here is the dimension this story almost always omits. Marc Rich also supplied Israel with oil during the 1973 Yom Kippur War, when Arab nations cut supply specifically to starve Israel's military. He ran a secret oil pipeline between Israel and Iran before the revolution. He funded Jewish cultural institutions across Europe. He gave hundreds of millions in humanitarian donations. The Israeli government, including multiple prime ministers, would later lobby Clinton directly for his pardon. Because to them, Marc Rich was not a criminal. He was someone who had been there when it mattered. He was all of these things simultaneously. And quietly, in 1984, he hired a young South African coal trader named Ivan Glasenberg. He did not know it yet. But he was hiring the person who would inherit everything he had built. Everything you have heard so far is the story of a genius building an empire. Now here is the part that changes everything. November 4, 1979. Iranian students storm the American embassy in Tehran. 66 Americans taken hostage. 14 are released in the first weeks. 52 remain. One of them is a man named Barry Rosen. The embassy's press attaché. 32 years old. He has a wife and a young child at home in New York. He will spend 444 days in captivity. President Carter responds immediately. He freezes Iranian assets. He bans Iranian oil imports. He makes it a federal crime for any American person or company to do business with Iran. Marc Rich's company is not American. It is Swiss. Switzerland has no embargo against Iran. While Barry Rosen and 51 other Americans sat in captivity in Tehran. While their families watched the news every night. While American oil companies walked away from Iranian contracts as the law required. Marc Rich became Iran's largest oil buyer. His company bought hundreds of millions of dollars of Iranian crude. It gave the Iranian government the foreign currency it needed to function. He later said, "In our business, we are not political." Now here is the part that connected this to your life directly. In 1979 and 1980, because of the supply disruption from Iran, oil prices doubled. If your parents drove a car during this period, they sat in queues. The economy went into recession partly because energy became so expensive so fast. Marc Rich did not create the hostage crisis. But he was among the most significant financial beneficiaries of it. Trading with the government holding Americans hostage while American law specifically forbade it. His argument: he was operating under Swiss law, not American. His critics' argument: he was an American citizen who had built his fortune in America and was now using Swiss incorporation as a legal shield while American citizens suffered. Both arguments are true. That is precisely what made the case so difficult. And precisely what made the pardon so explosive. Now for the second answer. Did Bill Clinton sell a presidential pardon? Here are the facts. By the late 1990s, Rich's lawyers had tried everything. The Justice Department would not negotiate. The FBI would not stand down. So they hired Jack Quinn, Clinton's former White House counsel, a man with a direct phone line to the president. Quinn took the case and, according to congressional investigators, advised Rich's team to go directly to the White House, bypassing the Justice Department entirely. The Justice Department later said they were kept in the dark about the pardon application. Clinton's own chief of staff testified that White House aides urged the president not to do it. Simultaneously, Denise Rich was writing checks. More than $1 million to the Democratic Party. $450,000 to the Clinton Presidential Library Foundation. Over $100,000 to Hillary Clinton's Senate campaign. On January 19, one day before the end of the presidency, Deputy Attorney General Eric Holder was asked for his assessment of the Rich pardon. He said, neutral, leaning favorable. He would later testify to Congress that he deeply regretted those words. January 20th. 11:47 p.m. The Oval Office. 13 minutes of a presidency remaining. The document is on the desk. Clinton picks up the pen. He signed. The congressional investigation that followed ran for 4 years. The FBI closed its file in 2005. No criminal wrongdoing formally established. Denise Rich had taken the fifth. Clinton said he had relied on Holder's assessment. Holder said he had been kept in the dark about key facts. Quinn said the original prosecution was a legal house of cards. Everyone had an explanation. Nobody had a clean pair of hands. And Marc Rich? He stayed in Switzerland. He never returned to America. He died in Lucerne in 2013, aged 78. A free man. As for whether Clinton sold the pardon, the investigation found no evidence of a formal transaction. What it found instead was a system in which access, money, and connection produced an outcome that the law alone never would have. Whether that is corruption or just power is a question only you can answer. Now for the third answer, and the one that connects directly to your life today. Why does any of this still matter? In 1993, while Marc Rich was still living in exile as a wanted fugitive, he sold his company. Quietly. To the management team he had spent 2 decades building. The man who led the buyout was Ivan Glasenberg, the young South African trader Rich had hired in 1984. They renamed it Glencore. Today, Glencore is the single largest commodity trading company on Earth. $247 billion in annual revenue. 150,000 employees across 35 countries. It manages approximately 3% of all global oil consumption. Its shipping fleet is larger than the British Royal Navy. It went public in London in 2011 at a valuation of nearly $60 billion. The methods Rich pioneered are Glencore's methods. Trade directly with governments. Move commodities others will not touch. Find the price in markets others refuse to enter. His name was removed from the door in 1993. His fingerprints are on every deal made since. Every time you fill your tank. Every time a power station burns coal. Every time a factory uses copper or zinc. There is a meaningful probability that commodity passed through infrastructure Marc Rich built. The refugee boy from Antwerp who invented the modern oil market while running from American justice is gone. His system runs the world. And the man who spent 15 years trying to put him in prison? Rudy Giuliani went on to become mayor of New York. Personal lawyer to a president. He never got Marc Rich. Here is the one thing that was never resolved. Not by the investigation. Not by the pardon. Not by any court. Marc Rich operated in the space between what the law said and what the law could reach. In that space, he made billions. He supplied countries in crisis. He broke a cartel that had controlled your energy price for decades. He funded Israel's survival in 1973. And he sold oil to a government holding American citizens hostage. The specific named ethical failure is this. The criminal justice system exists to resolve exactly these questions. A jury of 12 ordinary people would have heard the evidence. They would have delivered a verdict. Marc Rich would have had his answer. He made sure that never happened. He fled. He lobbied. He donated. He waited. And ultimately he found one man, in 13 minutes, with the power to make the question disappear entirely. Clinton later said it was terrible politics. He did not say it was wrong. Was Marc Rich a genius who found the gaps that capitalism leaves open? Or was he a man who discovered that with enough money and the right connections, you do not need to be innocent? You just need to be patient. The jury never decided. That is the point. In 1980, the same year Marc Rich was becoming Iran's largest oil buyer, two brothers in Texas were running a different kind of scheme. They were already among the richest men alive. And they decided that was not enough. So they tried to corner the entire global supply of silver. Every ounce. Every bar. Every coin in every vault on every continent. They came within days of pulling it off. Then the government changed the rules of the game. Midway through. That story, next.